have already been discussed in great detail. Before I get to my final point on that, I would like to just go through and again address the adverse effects that have been asked about. Some of them have been addressed, some of them have not. I just want to try to summarize them, being towards the end of the speakers this evening. Additionally, those aspects include the lighting situation. Again, we live on Westover behind Kugler Meadows. We have a perpetual night light that we can see from our second story master bedroom window every night, 7 days a week. Like the other lady who spoke, we don't need to turn on the lights at night. We've got them outside. With this development, we would have more of that. Second aspect is the noise, which has not been addressed very much. You put all that traffic in that area, whether it's used for a church, whether it's used for the Tri-Health facility or not, there's going to be a lot of noise. Traffic, I know that the Sycamore cannot address the traffic issues. Again, if you look at that amount of traffic coming through that area, it's going to be significant, it's going to be damaging. We've got a lot of kids in the neighborhood, we've got a lot of schools around there. In the morning when the schools are filling up and emptying out the buses and the parents and the cars, it's a disaster right now getting in and out of Kugler Mill Road from Weatherfield. The aesthetics, obviously the aesthetics will be gutted with this development. It's huge, as Merle said, it's simply a massive urban development in a residential area. The final point, and again also the traffic situation, if this does go through, you need to prevent it from coming through Sturbridge, because that's exactly what these people are going to do. The traffic is already backing up on Kugler Mill. Try to get through there at rush hour in the evening. There's 6, 7, 8 cars trying to turn left, trying to turn right at that intersection, and it's very, very dangerous today without this development. The final point gets to highest and best use. Again, a little bit of speculation in here. Why would 5 Star build a church on that property when you can put a whole series of either single-family structures, or you can put a series of townhomes connected on one wall, both walls, all through that area? That's being done on Montgomery Road right now. In Montgomery, they start at $650 and go up from there. It's a lot of money. You could possibly get 8, 10, 12, however many structures in there. You go with the rest of the development, which is ultimately going to take place, all the way down to Montgomery Road there. That whole parcel is going to go. The domino effect was mentioned earlier. You put a parking lot there, the domino is going to go one way. You put a series of townhouses, you put a series of individual family homes, the domino is going to go another way. So you've got a terrific impact that's going to take place one way or the other. The fork in the road is very definitely here. It's been addressed this evening, and you guys and ladies are going to make the decision this evening as to whether or not that fork goes to the left or the right. So again, you get into the highest and best use of the property. Why would you have a church that pays no property taxes and a parking lot which is essentially worthless to the township? You can put a whole series of residential structures in there. You get the property taxes, you retain the residential character of the area, you don't have the parking lot, you don't have the curb cuts, you don't have 166 cars coming and going. So essentially that's kind of a summary of what I've heard tonight and a summary of our comments as a 35-year resident of Sycamore Township. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rob Jutsey. My address is 5980 Kugler Mill Road. I've lived there a little over 20 years, but I've been a lifelong resident of the township.
Sir, were you sworn in earlier?
Yeah, I was. I don't try to remember this thing longer. Does the statute of limitations run out yet? I made some notes on the 3% values. If it runs out, I'm sorry. I'll try to be quick if I have to be, I guess. Earlier, you asked how much those properties were worth that you purchased. I ran a quick check of the auditor's site, and it was over $1 million or so. Just to that point, the point was made that you can't put residential there because you can't get your money back. But if you paid $1 million for that property, you got to think there's value in residential property because you paid $1 million for residential property. So it kind of goes against the grain to say you can't make money there if you spent that money on residential property. As far as, I think earlier, somebody mentioned about other churches being around here and how they're part of the community, they're in the neighborhoods they're in, like this one is attempting to be. The difference there with those churches along Kenwood Road here, it's a 4-lane road. The church up the street here is across the township building, the fire department, that's not residential. The building, the church down to the north, the south here is now across from what's gonna be a doctor's office. That's not residential. All Saints is on Montgomery Road. There's a doctor's office across the street from them. There's also Brookwood Retirement Community across the street from All Saints. That's not residential. There's also a big, the practice fields are behind there from Older and All Saints, with a nice big buffer zone between the school and the neighborhood. Additionally, that school and the parish were pretty much built concurrently with the neighborhood. Same with St. Gerb, same with like St. Savior. They're old churches that were built concurrently with the neighborhood and communing with the neighborhood. Not something that was built after an established neighborhood has already been there for 40 or 50 years like we have here in this case. So it's kind of an apples and oranges to compare the churches existing with the church that wants to go in here. I also have an issue. I want to ask a question about I don't think it's been asked about the walkways. What is the reason for the walkways between the two parking lots?
We heard concerns during our last rezoning that the church over there across Cooperville Road didn't have enough parking. And then the residents were complaining, saying that they were parking out on their street and they didn't appreciate it. So we thought that we would have excess parking over the office parking.
So 240 lots, parking places, plus the parking places by the Tri-Health building, enough, you needed all those additional spots, the ones you're gonna build, plus the ones to the south? That's why those are there?
If they needed excess parking, they can use it. If they don't, they don't.
Okay. I've been a resident here for 20 years. I live, if I can get up and show you, my house is kind of catty corner from I-71. It's right here, kind of on the northwest side of I-71. My property is pretty much the closest property to that church where you can park. Now, I've been there when the synagogue was there, and I've been there now with the Christian church. I can count on my hand the number of times in the 15 or 20 years that I've lived there, that there's been parking on Cooperville Road with people there. Most of it happened in the first 2 or 3 years of the synagogue. It's happened maybe 2 or 3 times since the church was there. Sure.
If the sidewalks are what's throwing everyone for consternation, they're gone. Yeah, they're out.
So it's all gonna be buffer now across there?
Gotta be what you got.
Is that buffer?
Yeah, we're doing away with the sidewalks.
I just wanna,
If that, the sidewalks are upsetting everyone, gone.
is that a berm? I don't know what. So how high is that?
No sidewalks. No, we're not putting a wall between the properties. We're not putting a sidewalk in. That's what has everyone upset.
I'm just asking, I didn't know why. I'm just asking why. I'm telling you, I know the church for a fact doesn't do additional parking because they never park on Charter Oak where I live. Let's see. I had a question, because I'm kind of ignorant when it comes to zoning laws, but I'm wondering, if this is rezoned, how, is it easier to get another zoning change for this property that is, how it exists now, or is it still the same process you go through?
This is not a rezoning, this will still be a residential area.
Okay.
And the purpose of testimony is to provide personal knowledge.
Thanks. I have one thing, I hate to be a stickler, but there was an objection to something that was read earlier, the statute. And there was, what Jack read from Mr. Mallow's letter, he read the statute, I believe it was it the statute you read? So there was an objection to that letter being read by Mr. Tepe, I believe. And there was also a motion to strike that letter from the record. Now, I just want to ask Mr. Tepe, will you stipulate at least and waive your objection to what Mr. Bloom read as far as the statute was an accurate representation, was a clear and accurate
He
representation
was
of the
reading,
statute?
from my understanding, he was reading from Mr. Mallow's letter, which contained his opinion, who was not here to be subject to
But he
cross-examination.
quoted the statute in that letter.
The statute is what it is, it exists whether it's introduced into evidence or not. So
I understand it, but since you made the objection,
I will stipulate that the statute says what it says.
okay, that's what I want to make sure.
I mean, that's like saying I
Because-
go abide by the law.
No,
I'll do it.
but you made an objection, if they make their opinion based on that statute, whether it was read, now that the objection is viable, because they've made a decision based on what was read in the record, which you objected to. I just wanna make sure the statute is in without objections. That's all.
Stipulate that the regulation says what it says.
Okay, that's all, I just wanna make sure of that. Real quick, I just wanna make sure I check everything here. Pretty much I agree with what's been said before. Lastly, as far as traffic, you know, I know Cuperlo's a cut-through street. I've lived for 20 years. I know it isn't. Traffic gets worse and worse, but this is gonna be the tipping point, I believe. It's just gonna make it so bad, with people coming in and out of the parking lot, especially if they're gonna use it for the medical building there. It's gonna really increase traffic on Cooper Mill. It's gonna make it really hard for the residents that live there. There's no sidewalk. It's already hard enough when I go walking down the street or jogging, dodging cars back and forth. You know, it's just, I see people taking strollers down there in the grass dodging cars, so it's just gonna be even worse with that, so. That's all, everything I need to say. Appreciate your time. Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes. I think you were sworn in earlier, right, sir? Hello? I think you were sworn in earlier, correct?
I'm sorry?
You were sworn in?
No, I
You
didn't
came-
catch it.
You came in late?
I'll swear now.
There you go. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Your answer is I do? Thank you.
My name is Harry Vogt. I live at 5600 Kugler Mill, and I believe there's such a concept as overdensity, and I guess it applies to churches as well. I just wondered if we know the number of churches or houses of worship that exist between Blue Ash and Montgomery Road. I know, I don't know what that number is, but if you go from Blue Ash to Montgomery Road, you'll see that there are a number of houses of worship and churches already. In addition to that, if you were to take a reasonable distance where this proposal is being presented, I think you'll find a lot more churches in that vicinity as well. And there is such a thing as overdensity. Blue Ash faced the same situation with the apartments in downtown Blue Ash, such that they felt that they were overbuilt with apartments, and that next time around, if you wanted to build apartment buildings, you should look for another location in Blue Ash. And I'm suggesting, I think there's more demand for residential property in the one being proposed than there is for a for a church like Kugler Mill. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I already spoke, but I do have a question, if I may, for the developer.
All right.
My question would be, if residential development would not be economically feasible, can you kind of walk us through what the economics of a church would be for your five-star equity?
Somebody makes us an offer and we accept it.
But, I mean,
Nobody's
you know that
residential,
residential.
everyone says that residential is a hotbed of residential activity. We have reached out to half a dozen, and we've got no offers on residential. If somebody knows some residential developer that is dying to be here, call me. Churches, we have two churches who express it,
Well,
that
don't
they're very
tear
keen
down a
interest in
house
being
that's
here.
there.
We have no residential interest whatsoever.
Then don't tear down that house that's there if you're truly looking for that.
They're not.
Okay, if there are no other
Can I just?
comments, I'll ask the applicant for their chance at any discussion on any items that were brought.
I'll be brief. My name is Tom Tepe. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Keating Camp here on behalf of the property owner. Much has been said. It's been a long night. You guys are working for free, and I think everybody certainly appreciates the efforts that you're putting forth tonight. This is a difficult job, and I know many people in this room have served in similar capacity, so thank you for your service. Much has been said about the spirit and intent, how this area is residential, and how it's so inconceivable that someone could fathom putting a church at this spot. In fact, it was brought up that the reasons the township developed its own zoning was to prevent exactly what's happened across the street where there's a church. But I asked you this question: if they were so against that church and so against a church being on this piece of property, then why did the trustees allow it as a conditionally permitted use? We didn't make up the rules. The zoning code is the force of law. A land use plan has no force of law. It is a guiding document. And if they were so against this area that abuts I-71 from containing a church, churches have to be treated exactly the same way as commercial property. And unless this board has ever asked every commercial developer who exactly your tenants are, we need to be careful, right? It is still development. You have to treat them with the same, they have the same rights as the fine people back there that took the time here to come speak. If it was so inconceivable that a church would be located here, then why did they allow it as a conditionally permitted use?
I've lost you now. I thought you were here to ask for conditional use.
We are.
So I missed your point there that the trustees have allowed it.
They have allowed
They haven't allowed it, they've allowed you to request one.
if they didn't want a church to be on this property, Mr. Sheedy, they would say it's not even a conditionally permitted use. They would say it is an excluded use. They didn't do that. They said it's conditionally permitted, provided that you meet these additional factors.
Right, well, yeah.
And we believe that we have met all of those additional factors.
So as I follow you, a conditional use is permitted, provided that we approve it based on whatever conditions we may want to attach to it.
I believe that a conditionally permitted use is a use that is allowed, provided that you meet the additional standards that are set forth in the code, which we walked through. Mr. Holbert walked through all of those criteria. They have met everything. This property will meet every zoning classification. Whether you have architectural renderings of it right now, they're not necessary at this time. This isn't an architectural review board, right? We don't have that. The trustee said we don't want that right here. Could, and the ISR, look, that to me is a red herring. We can make that work. It's not a big deal. It really isn't. The sidewalks, you heard it, they're gone. We ask that you take a look at the application, listen to the evidence that's germane to your decision. And I think that's gonna be a really difficult part for you, to try to separate what is real germane to the decision-making process, and that which is just, we don't like it, traffic, things of that nature that are not within this board's purview, water runoff.
We can't make a decision based on traffic. I think
You can't.
the cases have been clear.
Traffic is not a valid zoning consideration. I mean, I can go into that, but Mr. Solomon is dark.
You don't have to.
He can tell you, so,
I think we know.
that having been said, it's late, I mean, you're going on almost 10 o'clock. We appreciate your time, we appreciate your patience, and we ask that you take a look at what's been, the germane evidence that's been presented to you, and we ask that you find in favor of granting the conditional permit.
I have a simple question. Have you guys had meetings with these folks?
No.
No.
We met with them as part of the rezoning process, 6 months ago.
No.
No meetings about the church.
We met with the president of the homeowners association, we met with 4 or 5 presidents of the homeowners associations. We did not meet with 60 or 70 people. We met with what we were led to believe were the decision makers. At one point in time, we came to a compromise, and then they decided they didn't want that compromise.
I disagree with that. We begged you to try and build something smaller and not up above. Take it down to where the Hauser building was, down on Galbraith. You were against that. You came back and said, well, then we're gonna build a church. That's what we're gonna do. You threatened us and gave us no other alternative.
I don't wanna get the big rig.
My point is that we find, my observation, we find ourselves in this situation almost every time when the applicants haven't had a face-to-face with the folks.
We have met, we have met in, again, I can't speak for everybody back there that says we haven't met with them, but we have had meetings on this development, this project, on many different iterations.
With Jack Bloom.
Okay, wait,
Not on the church we have,
Okay.
not on the
We
church,
have had
we met
many
on the
iterations
tri-health
of
tower
and we've
too.
reached the conclusion that, we've reached the,
One at a time.
David Kubicki and with the developer, we've reached the conclusion that I don't, that
There's nobody to meet with.
there's nobody that's gonna come, hold on.
There's not a decision maker, there's not a decision maker.
Who here met with them on the church?
We could meet a
Who here
consensus.
met with them on the church?
We would meet a consensus with a certain group of people, then somebody else would come and trigger a new set of circumstances that's changing. But yes, we've met, yes, we've tried countless times, and I don't think anybody could deny that, with homeowners, with presidents of the homeowners association, and we've tried, and, we have tried. And, we will continue to work with people to aim to please on this, with people from Cougar Meadows to everything else. With that said, we have met. It's just-
I'm
you
president
can't
of
please
New England
everybody.
Court, and I was never approached.
Okay,
Not-
well-
Not one, ever.
Who here has been approached?
And
church.
I can tell you regarding this church, nothing was ever brought forth to any of the homeowners association.
And let me be
The
clear.
time we
And
met
Norm-
with
I don't
them,
mean
Really?
church, I mean several.
Once at a, one person at a time. She can't take down
when
people's
we
names
met
that
with
she doesn't
them
have.
and with the other homeowners associations with them, it was regarding the new tower they wanted to build that encroached over into the residential area. And that got stopped because they gave the permanent easement, that's what crushed that. They would not waver at all on the heights, on the densities, any of that. It was gonna be their way or no way. Then they said, well, if we don't get that, then we're gonna build a church. That's the only time the church was brought up. On this project, did they ever come before us and say, here's what we're thinking, what do you think about the size, this, that? Never, not a word. This is the first time it's been brought in front of us.
And it's still a party.
Okay, whether they met with you or not is not going to be a factor in our decision.
Right.
So that's, they're not required to meet with you. It's nice if they do, but there's no requirement to meet with you. So, but that's not going to be a factor, at least in my decision. So,
Would you ask the
Mr.
question?
Chairman?
I have a question.
There were two people that were trying to make a comment during this conversation.
Isn't
You want
the
to
Ma'am,
hear-
have you been sworn in, ma'am?
No, Karen Shane, New England Court.
Address?
David Lazar.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Your answer's like do.
I do.
Thank you.
A township, as I understand it, is supposed to take care of the residents.
Right.
That's the main difference between a township and other forms of government. So I think you're hearing what the residents want. Yes, we have one resident, if you wanna call an ownership of the property, who wants commercial. I don't call that a resident. Everybody else here, everybody else you've heard from is a resident. That should be what comes first. And